May the holy mystery be revealed in Jesus Christ be visible to us in all the small miracles of our daily life. Amen. The year I was 5 years old, I lived with my family in a small house with a tiny backyard. The yard had a sparse lawn, a patch of flowers, and a grape arbor, and a massive old tree that towered over all the rest. Beyond that tree, though, stretched a half-acre of barren land without grass, tree, or flowers. It was, in fact, nearly entirely empty. Apart from a few scraggly cacti, there was nothing there but stone, gravel, and sand. This was the desert, after all. We lived in those days in a town called Upland, about 35 miles east of Los Angeles. Since then, Upland has been entirely swallowed by LA's urban sprawl. But at the time, it was mostly orange groves. Nothing grew there without water, though. In fact, the only plant that grew in that stretch of land behind our house besides cacti was a sparse, ground-hugging weed with sharp little thorns that my sister and I called bullheads. Even at 5, that stretch of land seemed to me a harsh, unlovely place, a place to avoid. I never went there, except on Mondays. The thing is, Monday was washing day. We couldn't afford a dryer in those days, and that half-acre of desert was where the clothesline was located. It meant that once a week my mother would carry out basket after basket of clean, wet clothes and string them along the line to bake in the pounding glare of the Southern California sun. I would accompany her and play while she worked. There wasn't much that I felt safe doing in that desolate bit of wasteland, so I usually brought with me a toy I called my stick pony. This was an old mop handle to which my mother had attached a stuffed sock to make a horse head. She had sewn on buttons for eyes and stitched on a mouth so that, to me, it felt like a real horse. I would straddle my stick pony and gallop over the rough, unwelcoming ground, never going far from my mother as she strung laundry, always aware of the harsh emptiness of the place. The landscape never changed. Then one Monday it did. It began as usual. I followed my mother out to the clothesline with my toy pony and began to gallop about. Then suddenly I spotted something I had never seen before. I stopped abruptly. Slowly I came closer. What I saw seemed to me a little miracle, a tiny wonder, a small, delicate flower with 4 fragile petals of brilliant orange rising all alone from the sandy ground. I had at this point lived in Southern California for virtually the entirety of my short life, so I must have seen a California poppy before. But if I had, it had never caught my attention. And yet now it riveted me. More than that, it enchanted me. How can I explain how deeply it touched me? That little flower with its quartet of dainty orange petals, growing all alone and untended in that lifeless place. How can I convey how much it stirred my 5-year-old heart, how much it excited me? I felt that I had never before seen anything so lovely. The flower was just so beautiful, so unexpected, so slight, so impossible. Beyond that, though, it seemed genuinely miraculous, truly magical. What was it doing here in this brutal environment? How did it get here? It was clear to me that no one had planted it, and yet suddenly here it was. To my child's mind, this frail burst of brilliance somehow suggested life in the midst of lifelessness, hope in the face of desolation. It seemed a glimpse into something hidden within the apparent barrenness of the world, a secret enchantment an otherworldly upwelling of life-giving courage, optimism, and promise. It seemed a gift, a sign, a hint of something greater. I galloped around and around it, trying to take it in. And as I did, I remembered that my heart soared. I felt that I was filled with light, filled with warmth. I felt transformed. I felt something that, looking back, I can only describe as wonder, as awe, as hope. I felt that I stood just at the edge of something mysterious and profound. I just couldn't get enough of it. And yet, when I came back a week later, the flower was gone. Monday after Monday, I searched for it. I rode my stick pony over every inch of that half acre, but saw only the same barrenness as before. My miracle had vanished, and I couldn't get it back. And yet I never forgot the enchantment of that first discovery. And whenever I thought of it, something of my inspiration returned. And I thought, the miracle is there. I know it is. I just have to find it. But even if I don't find it, it's there. In today's passage from Mark, Jesus takes 3 of his disciples to a mountain. There he shows them something that awes them, something that shocks them, something that terrifies them. Just for a moment, Jesus pushes aside the veil. He gives his disciple a glimpse into the depth of the mystery that stands just behind what we normally take to be reality. He gives them the briefest peek into the fullness of who he truly is, a glimpse into the really real. Then suddenly it's gone. In one instant, they see Jesus transformed with Moses and Elijah on either side. The next instant is just as before. The light has vanished. The vision evaporated. And as the gospel says, they saw only Jesus. Now, let me point out that only is not a word that most of us would normally put before the name Jesus. And yet, in this case, it applies. After seeing Jesus transfigured and transformed, after glimpsing him in some of his fullness, in his glory, his eternity, they saw him only as a man again, an ordinary human being, a human being with special gifts, of course, but still a human being like themselves. They were back in the mundane world, and yet they had seen something miraculous. They had looked into a fuller reality. They had felt the awe, the enchantment, and they remembered it. Long after the vision had vanished, they remembered. I believe this experience is not as rare as it may seem. For most of us, life can seem so ordinary. We go about our daily life doing the routine things that we have to do to live and to function in the world. We look for something deeper, but God can seem far away. Even worse, there are other times when God does not just seem far away, but entirely absent. We look for God, but instead we find nothing but desolation, nothing but emptiness. When that happens, our very life itself can begin to feel like a desert, a wasteland, a place where nothing grows. We call out to God, but hear no answering voice, and we wonder whether the wasteland is all there is. Anyone who has gone through this knows how terrible it is. St. John of the Cross called these periods the dark night of the soul. They are that and more. They are times of profound loneliness, emptiness, hopelessness, and despair. They can be unbearably painful and deeply disorienting, and yet they're just part of the journey. They come, they also go, dispelled in sudden flashes of grace, small glimpses into the miraculous, the beautiful, the really real. The thing is, those miraculous moments can be so brief, so apparently trivial, perhaps no more than a delicate flower, that that if we're not careful, we'll miss them. We have to watch for them. And when we notice them, we need to cherish them. That's what my first encounter with the poppy was for me. It was my earliest experience of a deeper reality, the reality of life persisting against all odds, the reality of beauty springing forth unbidden, the reality of hope appearing where least expected, the reality of eternal meaning lurking behind the day to day. It was my earliest experience of the miraculous bursting forth into the mundane ordinariness of life. But since then, I've had countless other glimpses into this deeper mystery. Some have been dramatic, such as my 4-day pilgrimage climbing one of China's 4 sacred mountains. Others have been quiet, such as a moment on a bus traveling through the farmlands of upstate New York when, watching the sunlight on the empty fields, I felt a sudden overwhelming peace and joy. Still others grow out of my habit of daily centering prayer, when my silent meditation suddenly opens up and I feel myself one with all that is, surrounded by an all-encompassing love. These times are not frequent, nor do they last long. They come, they show me what I know to be the truth, the deepest truth. Then they go. But the memory of them persists. You know, I never pass a California poppy now without remembering my first magical encounter. In fact, I keep in my study a print of Georgia O'Keeffe's famous painting of that poppy. For me, it's not merely the image of a beautiful flower. It's a reminder that there is hope, a reminder that there are miracles, a reminder that I, and all of us, are children of eternity, children of God. Weeks go by and I hardly glance at the print. Then one day I find myself feeling a little empty inside, filled with doubt. I pray to God and hear nothing. Then I turn to that print of the poppy and I remember. I remember the day I first encountered that little flower when I was 5 years old, and the vision it gave me of hope, of courage, of a deeper meaning that underlines all that is. And something of that feeling returns. It's not quite the same, but it's enough. It carries me through. So teach yourself to notice those times when you've glimpsed the beautiful reality hidden behind the veil of the mundane. They may be small moments, and they will certainly pass, but they speak eternal truths. So notice them and remember them. They are miracles. They will keep you going.